economy, she will talk about robust animal spirits in a small open economy. Please.
Thank you very much, Sandra. I will start my presentation of this work in progress. This is not finished yet, but I would like to show you first the motivation of this paper, after a brief explanation of the preference that I will use, that Professor Marinacci did a great job explaining before me, so I can use that explanation. My particular model for this kind of preference using in a particular model of a small open economy, and then the solution method that is a subject itself. How to solve this kind of method is quite hard, so it is a problem itself how to solve this, and then a small result that I do have in this paper already. So what is the main objective? I would like to expand the Schmitt-Groh and Uribe model for a small open economy. What to understand for a small open economy, just to be clear, is that the demand and the offer from this small open economy does not change the equilibrium prices. That is what we understand for a small open economy. So in the international equilibrium, the international prices are not changed by the demand or the offer from products, or also debt, the demand of debt or offer of debt, and that's the small open economy. So interest rate and the price of service and prices of goods are just given outside of the economy. Okay. What is the difference of my model with Schmitt-Groh and Uribe? Is that household in my model has multiplier preferences. What is that? Multiplier preference is the model developed by Hansen and Sargent to Nobel Prizes in economics, and is related to the talk of Professor Marinacci. What is the particularity of this kind of preference? Is that they are concerned about model misspecification. So it is the third source of uncertainty that Professor Marinacci just said. I also take this classification of uncertainty because it's a paper that he wrote with Hansen, and in this he put this third type of uncertainty. Arrow 1951 present two types of uncertainty, risk and ambiguity, and in this recent paper they add this third type of uncertainty, that's model misspecification. What happened in that case? Household had a model, a reference model, but they think that could be misspecified in some way. So they take decisions considering the worst case scenario in terms of probabilistics. What I would like to do after to solve the problem of household in this small open economy, to evaluate the welfare cost of business cycle in terms of the robustness concern of model misspecification concern of the agents. Okay, like I told you before, I will use multiplier preference of Hansen and Sargent. And in this case, household are endowed with a benchmark model. So they have a model that can represent the way that stochastic variables works. Okay? But they have doubts about their model, so they present a plan that is robust, perform well across different types of model that household consider possible. Before present you the multiplier preference in particular, I will talk to you about how to represent the probabilistic models that Household consider are as possible. So, and we will represent it in this way. We will consider just models that are absolutely continuous with respect to the reference model that we have. We have a probabilistic model, a measure over sigma algebra. So we have an alternative models that will be absolutely continuous to respect to that reference model. So basically what I am doing with that the probability of the event that had zero probability with the reference model, also for another alternative model, this event also have zero probability. Okay? And how we can construct all this model that absolutely continuous using martingales. These martingales represent random-Nikodym derivatives of the alternative model with respect to the reference model. So, why to do that? Because makes the problem more simple and we can solve the household problem in a direct way. So, this is the problem. We have a max-min problem. Max because we have households that want to maximize their utility function. That is just in the same case of individuals that are risk averse. So the part of max is about maximization of utility. The part of min is to respect to the expected value. So, like I told you before, we have we distrust about our reference model, our reference probabilistic model, so we can consider many of them that we characterize by this increment of martingales that, like I told you before, represent random-Nikodym derivatives. So if we want to take the expected value with respect to any model that a household considers as possible, we can do it by this way. Twisting the probability model, the original probability model, by m. M represents the increments of martingale that represent random-Nikodym, so the change in probabilities. Okay? One model, the another model. So the mean part is respect to expected value. We would like to choose the model that makes expected value lower. But this problem is constrained in some way because this minimization part has a final part that is that with the log of mt, and that part represents relative entropy. So we have a new parameter that is theta, and theta represents the concern for misspecification. What represents the last part of the equation 1? If agents are taking the worst probabilistic scenario to take decisions, but the last part is a penalty to go it's a penalty associated with change the probability measure that you are taking to you are considering to take a decision. If you choose a particular probability measure that is very bad in terms of the expected value of the value function b, but is quite far away from the reference model, the entropy, the relative entropy, is big, because relative entropy represents a distance between different measures. Okay? So, in this case, we have multiplier preference, how to take decisions considering the worst case scenario, but they are penalty by the deviation of the model, the probabilistic model that they choose. So we can solve this problem. First, we solve the minimization, the inner minimization, and when we find the worst case scenario, we can solve the maximization like we always do in economics. Okay? There is the penalty parameter. So, this conserves for robustness. If you look this equation, when theta goes to infinity, the penalty part of this equation, the last part, related to relative entropy, grows to infinity. So this part disappears for minimization. And in this case, what do we have is just a risk aversion person. So when theta goes to infinity, we have nest in this model risk aversion. But with theta, for the other side, if theta is low, there exists some lower bound, theta bar, the one that I put at that, there is the lower bound for this penalty parameter, and in this case we have the neurotic breakdown point. The household, the person that is taking decisions is sufficiently unconstrained that can put the criterion of minimum expected value in minus infinitum. So he is a person that is extremely exaggerated as in terms of uncertainty. Okay? An important thing that when theta goes to infinity, misspecification vanishes, is that we can, in this case, we nest the risk aversion model. So if we take the limit theta infinitum, if it goes to infinite, we can have the decision that just a risk aversion person takes.
Excuse me, I have a problem. This limit, is it not a singular perturbation limit?
Sorry?
A singular perturbation limit means when you sit at the limit, or you are arbitrarily close to the limit, the solutions are dramatically different. So, to be very aware, to think of theta equals infinity as recovering just uncertainty apart, because if you take theta equals 1 million or whatever number enormously large, it does not amount to neglect this term. It amounts to take it as dominant, and the first term in uncertainty as a perturbation to this entropy term. So it's very important to distinguish between at the limit, meaning go theta equals 1, I mean, let's just say 1 over theta equals 0 at the limit, and 1 of theta, extremely small epsilon. So, is there a singular perturbation limit? I would guess here, and so that the argument that you can actually, by large theta, neglect the entropy term is not supported, or cannot be supported.
When we find the solutions of MT, it is more clear that what's happened when theta goes to infinity. And you can see when theta grows, in bigger thetas, we are closer to the solutions of risk-averse person. So, if we solve the inner minimization, we have that M star, the M that solves the minimization, is that rating from the exponential of the value function and the expected value of the value functions. So the expected value of m star, is 1, okay? If we replace this m star in the original problem, equation 1, we have this new Bellman equation for the value function. So this is in a general form because I didn't put in particular the utility function of the household that I will use. I just put an f function that is general. So in this kind of preference are also used for Tagliarini to represent another kind of risk, and it is also a particular case of Epstein-Singh that is another kind of preference when you have a particular value of the substitution, the elasticity of substitution, intertemporalist substitution. Yes, there is some observational equivalence between different kind of models with robust control model. Okay, so if we look at when we solve the minimization, we have the expectation with respect to the worst case scenario, or with respect to an alternative model of the reference. But in this case, we are taking the expected value with respect to the benchmark model, okay? Because we change this, we solve this problem, we are already replaced m in the problem. So, but for my particular problem, I will take this utility function for any moment of time, and in this case, CT represents consumption, 8T represents labor. So this kind of preference are very used in small open economy literature, and also in macroeconomics in general, because with this kind of utility function we don't have an income effect. So we are sure that the labor offer has a positive slope. That's because that is the reason because I choose this kind of preference. And also I am following the paper of Schmitt-Groh and Uribe, that is a traditional paper in small open economy. So I choose this kind of preference for each moment. And we have the Bellman equation. In this case, the state variables are debt, capital, and productivity. T is a state variable that will be helpful for us and in the part of solving the model, but not yet. Okay? Equation, the next equation is the budget constraint, that we have the movement of debt in function of production, that is YT, consumption, investment, and also I consider capital adjustment cost. That is the last part. So if you adjust the stock of capital, okay, we have this kind of cost associated. And finally, we are assuming that we have sovereign risk, that is the equation for interest rate, R, that we have that. And R star is the international interest rate. If we solve that problem, we have these first order conditions, and like we can see, M, the Martin-Valles increments of different kind of models, and in this case, the worst case scenario, are in the equation 4 and in equation 5 that relates consumption today with consumption tomorrow. Okay, that is the Euler equation related to consumption, and and debt. And the second one is the first order condition and the Euler equation related to the stock of capital. So when we have to analyze the path of the variables in the time, M matters. If we have a household that is just risk averse and the ratio between the exponential of the value function totally disappear. Okay? So this twist change the Euler equation and the first order equation that shows dynamic effect. Following Vrije and Schmitt, to solve this model, in general, dynamic stochastic general equilibrium model are a little bit difficult to solve because typically don't have an analytic solution. So, in general model, including risk aversion models, we have to use some kind of method to solve because we cannot solve in a direct way. So I am using the methodology of Vrije and Schmitt and Fernández Villaverde and Vance Birkens 2009 that use perturbation method. What is that? It's just to construct a Taylor approximation of the equilibrium equations. So we have the first order conditions, we have also the definition of the value function, and the restriction like budget constraint and the movement of the shocks that we are considering, the stochastic shock that we are considering in this model. So, in particular for the value function, I put how it looks like the approximation, and it's just a Taylor, but we have to be careful because when we calculate these derivatives of the value function, we have to are aware of envelope theorem because this value function is in their maximal point. So if it is in the maximal point, we have to be aware of envelope theorem. What is the interesting thing about this solution method is that we can have a term that represents the one BTT that I have at the last part of the equation that represent the effect of uncertainty in the welfare or in the value function of individuals. So, in which way this can represent the effect? For this model, we have that BTT has this formula and depends on theta. Theta is the robust parameter that introduced in this case, in this type of models. The concern for misspecification. So, what is the importance of that? Because I want to estimate the effect on welfare of uncertainty, and in particular when people are concerned about model misspecification and theta represent this concern. So, if I saw that, I could think that welfare in the case of a robust person compared with risk aversion person is less, but we can't do that because utility functions are just ordinal, not cardinal. So the way that can I compare between welfare is by consumption. So what I have to do, I have to measure what is the decrease in consumption that makes household indifferent between consuming less consumption with certainty or more consumption with uncertainty. Okay, so this tau it represents the reduction in consumption that a person is able to accept to consume with certainty instead of uncertainty. And what do I found? Well, that in this case, when we have just risk aversion, this coefficient BTT could be positive or could be negative. In particular, when we have some person that just risk averse, BTT just depend of BAA. The second part totally disappears when theta goes to infinity, and we have a person that is just risk averse. The concern for robustness disappears. And I also calculate this model and the value is the same. What is the particularity of this is that BAA could be positive or could be negative. Not necessarily is positive or negative. So for a risk aversion person, this effect on welfare of uncertainty could be positive or could be negative. In the case of robust person, we have a coefficient that is always negative. Okay? That is the difference in this case. So it is a small conclusion that I have already. So thank you.
We have time for one or two short questions. Please.
Yes.
If you go back to slide 9, please.
Yes.
Okay. I am amazed by your results because if I look at equation 2, and I do, please follow me in the mental calculation. I take the limit of very large theta. I come back to my first question. My V over theta goes to 0. Exponential of something very small is 1 plus something very small, right? Expectation of 1 plus something very small is 1 plus the expectation of this. So I get that the log of 1 plus something very small is very small. And I get beta theta times V over theta. The theta cancels out. So even when I take the limit theta goes to infinity, I find the capital V has always, especially in the limit theta goes to infinity, the correction term in V. So without all the Bellman equation optimization, I see just here, if I take the limit of large theta, the second term V will always be important. So I'm trying to understand what is happening in your calculation that makes it wrong. Did you follow my calculation?
Yes, I understand.
So I can see two possibilities. One is you made a calculation error. And the second possibility is that I'm stupid and I don't understand something. That's probably the second one. I don't understand something with the Bellman optimization that does a trick by essentially waiting on scenarios that somehow kill this calculation method. I don't have intuition. Can you help me?
I really no, I don't. I don't have the intuition that can explain that. It is more easy to see when we solve it and to see directly and so. But the path, if I am let theta grows, I have to analyze better.
Essentially, what I'm saying is that you could do the Bellman optimization already by making an expansion at this level. Mm-hmm. It should be consistent.
Okay.
It looks like it's not consistent.
Sorry, but if I may suggest, so since it's a technical remark, I would suggest you to discuss this.
Yes,
privately.
but it's a great suggestion. Thank you.
I think it's a tricky point.
It's a technical, sorry, but it's absolutely fundamental.
Yeah, of course.
On the conclusion, everything boils around the fact of going to uncertainty when it actually.
I'm not diminishing the the importance of the question. I'm just saying that probably
No, it's not a question. It is.
so.
Oh yes, it is not something that I have to think. Yes, thank you.
Let's thank the speaker again.